All right, so let's go and address requirement number 11, which is to create a pivot table that will display a summary of our region's activities. So this region summary, as we're going to call it, will be a pivot table that will display the number of transactions, the total profit margin, the smallest profit margin, and the largest profit margin for that for each one of the regions. All right, so let's start by selecting the data that we want to work with. In this case, is my entire sheet of transactions. And in Google Sheets, all of my data functions are mainly um, contained in the data menu on top. And I can just come to the pivot table option. By creating a pivot table, then I can have this name to region summary. According to the requirements, I need to make sure that every row is based on region. So let's go ahead and do this as a region. So by adding the region on my rows, it's going to summarize data by each one of those regions. The other thing that I need to make sure that I do is that I only display stuff for the year 2018. So let's go ahead and add that filter based on the date. I can just, let's go ahead and filter by condition. Date is, well, I like it between one date and the other. Let's see if this one works. 12/31/2018. And let's OK it. All right. Then let's go ahead and do the next requirement, which was to provide the total number of transactions for that year. So on my values, I want to display a count of customers, right? Because it's just going to count every transaction. 497. Let me just verify that my customer summary was the same. Yeah, it looks like I had 497 transactions in 2018. And it specifically says that I'm going to name this number of transactions. So let me grab that name and put it in there. Number of transactions. I'll paint it or format it differently later on. The next thing is to provide you with the total profit margin. So let's go ahead and add another value that looks at the operating margin, and that's just the sum, and that is correct. So in total, we had a profit margin for everybody of 116. Let's go ahead and look at our customer summary, and it looks right, 116,596.60. The next transaction that I want is to provide the smallest profit margin for each one of those regions. So I'm going to have another column for profit margin or operating margin. Instead of having the sum, I'm looking for the minimum. So this was the smallest profit margin for each one. And then I'm going to have another one that is based on operating margin, but it's looking at the largest profit margin. So instead of the sum, the min, and I'm going to have the max. And that's it. So let's go ahead and name these total profit margin. The next one's going to be smallest profit margin. And this is going to be my largest profit margin. This is something that Google Sheets just created the ability to change the labels, and this is within the last couple of months. In the past, it would force you not to be able to change that. I'm gonna change the way this is being displayed. I want this to be wrapped so that I don't have to cut the cells or the titles, and I'm gonna also center the titles. I want to make sure that these are in, by default, they should follow the same type of formatting that the underlying data has. So I will do the same thing here. And all of these should be dollar signs as well. All right, so I have the number of transactions. Let's make sure this is properly, the case is proper. Do I want this to be smaller? So just pretend this was going to a client of yours. How would you make it look? This looks a little dull. So let's see if I can format it with alternating colors. That's too much. Um, that doesn't look bad at all, or you may think it does. Let me make this a white, and let me bold these. So that looks a little better. So this is my region summary that lets me know which region has the largest profit margin or the lowest. I should have gotten the average, etc. But in general, I can see that the East region is doing the least with the least amount of transactions, the least profit margin overall. And I have the West with the most profit margin, even though it had the less number, the least number, not the most number of transactions. All right, so that's the end of requirement